governments that we have with our Greeks. So moving on now to oligarchy, which is something that you might not be familiar with. And when we look at the Greek words that make this together, we've got archo, which we had yesterday, archon, leader. So archo is to rule. And then oligos, which means a few. So a few rule. And that's what we have with an oligarchy. You typically have a small group of people, and they're usually super duper rich, and they make all of the decisions. So we see this little picture here. Everybody's got a crown, even the kid and the dog, and they're making these choices for the greater whole. Now, oligarchs are going to share power within each other and, like I said, come to a consensus, an agreement on what to do for decisions. Next is tyranny. Now, it comes from the Greek tyrannos. Now, what does that tyrannos, what does that remind us of? What does that look like? Something that you're probably all very familiar with ever since you're a little kid, tyrannos. What does that remind you of? What word does it sound like? Or maybe animal? What do you say, Danielle?
Like a dinosaur, or like a like one of those dinosaurs. I forgot the name though.
Who remembers it? Karachi?
Wasn't it like the Tyrannosaurus Rex or something?
Yeah, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Is that what you were going to say, Haley?
Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Awesome. Yeah, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. We got this because, like, you think of, like, the Tyrannosaurus Rex of being, like, king of the dinosaurs or lord of the dinosaurs. And we have, same, so Tyrannos, we get tyranny. And what happens is it's similar to a monarchy because we have the ruling power in the hands of one person. But it's different because they are not the lawful king or ruler. They took power. And so typically they take power by force. So it's not like, you know, for Carson to become a tyrant, it's not like his dad was king before him and then he went and became king because of the set plan. It's not like he was voted in. It's Carson said, I want to be the boss. So he goes, gets the military, and becomes the boss. And that is a tyranny. We often use the word dictatorship now to represent the same kind of idea. The word tyrant from tyranny typically now means that you're like a cruel or unjust ruler. Like if I were to be a tyrant, I would say, yes, there should be more homework for all of you. And give you lots and lots of assignments that were extra, you know, and then grade them really, really hard. And you could then say, Mr. Kenny is a tyrant. And now we have democracy. Now, democracy, looking at the Greek, we have the demos, which are the common people, and we have kratos, which is rule or strength. I know some of you might have played or heard of the God of War games, which has the guy Kratos as the character. And, you know, it literally means strength for his name. So what we have is power to the people, or ruling for the regular people. And that's exactly what democracy is. This idea that the power is in the hands of the population. So in a democracy, we have all citizens sharing and ruling power. When you guys become adults, you are going to wind up having the ability to have ruling power. We're going to talk about how it looks in our government versus it looked in Athenian government. All right? So democracy, power to the people. So there's two types of democracy. We have direct democracy, which is every single citizen votes on every single issue. So for example, maybe they'll have a meeting to go and vote on a new name of a street. And then, so that's everybody working for every single thing. That's a direct democracy. And that's similar to how some things were done in Athens. Not everything, but some things. The other kind is a representative democracy or a democratic republic, which is something that we have. And this is where we elect representatives to decide the issues. Because one of the things is, so I'm a teacher. It's my job to know history. It's my job to know how to convey it to you. I'm not an expert on every single law or legal matter. So what I do is I vote for someone who I believe would be an expert, someone who could represent me and make decisions. Because let's face it, I don't want to have to be getting calls on my phone while I'm going and trying to teach you, be like, oh, Mr. Kenny, should we buy more toilet paper for the White House? Yes or no? Like, do I want to, hey, Mr. Kenny, do you think we should go build an oil pipeline across these two states in the Midwest? I don't know, and I don't have time to be going and getting calls and constantly ask for everything or going to meetings. So what we see is a situation that typically direct democracy works very well for small populations. For example, if we were in person in class, there'd be many times that we would have voted on something as a class. And when we do polls, that's direct democracy. Every single one of you have the option to be able to participate in power and make a choice. Representative democracy we see in schools with our SGA, our student government, which, you guys would elect a 5th grade representative. So if you all say, we think that Avery should be our 5th grade representative, that means you guys tell Avery what you want, and then Avery goes and tries to fight for that in the government. He'd say, 5th grade really needs, a French fry bar they really want that in the cafeteria, or they really think we should have 5 minutes of extra recess. And then then the whole governing body would listen to Avery. So that's the difference right there. Are we going to talk about the Spartans? I don't think we're going to talk about the Spartans. Let me double check our Planaruni here. I don't think we were going to talk about that. But let's see. Where is it? Our plan for the day, 6 through 11. Oh, yeah, I said we were. Okay, sorry about that. We're going to continue on. We're going to go have a brief introduction to the Spartans. So, Sparta is going to first have a monarchy, and then it's going to switch to an oligarchy where a group of aristocrats are going to rule. They're going to be called the elders. So we're going to be transitioning to a point where we're looking at the different city-states, particularly Athens and Sparta. And so we see with our governments, first they had a monarchy, and then they became ruled by an oligarchy. And the thing about the Spartans was they thought strength was the most important thing at all. So what would happen is, for example, even when a child was born, the elders of Sparta, they would inspect the baby to see if the baby was strong and healthy. And if they decided that the baby did not look strong, they would go and let the baby die in the mountainside. They wouldn't give the baby a name yet. So, today, mommies and daddies, they have their baby and then they already have a name picked out and they're so excited. Well, here, the baby would be taken from the mommy and brought to the elders, and they would go and wash the baby in wine, which that might actually wind up hurt the baby, killing the baby as it is, because the alcohol, a little bit of alcohol would get through the skin. So weak babies would die right there. But then they would go and leave them by the mountainside if they did not look big or strong enough. If they did look strong enough, then they would go back to the parents and be allowed to name them. Pretty harsh. If you were a boy, from age 7, you were put into the military. You would leave your families and live in the military barracks. They would not give you enough food. You were encouraged to steal to get extra food. But if you got caught stealing, you would be beaten and punished severely. They wouldn't really give you much for clothes. They would give you a cloak, basically, which would be your blanket and your clothes. At 14, they would go and like take you to the middle of the woods and say, here's a spear, here's a cloak, see you later. And you had to find your way back to Sparta by yourself. So the Spartans, pretty harsh. Even when you got married, you weren't allowed to live at your own home until you were 30. You would have to sneak out of the barracks to go visit your wife before 30. Also, though, one of the interesting things in Sparta, women were given many more rights than we see happening in other city-states. Now, part of this is the boys were often at war. So because the boys were there, or not there, the girls had to run things. Women could own businesses. Women did a lot more sports in Sparta than other city-states because they thought strong women would produce strong babies. And those strong babies would, of course, lead to strong warriors. And this was because Sparta had one sole focus, and that was war. We're going to talk a lot more in detail about Sparta coming up next week. But this is just a little primer so you have an idea of what Sparta was like. Next, we move on to Athens. Now, Athens is going to be a birthplace of democracy. While war was the focus of Sparta, for Athens, it's going to be education, trade, art. And so whereas Sparta said every single boy from 7 on is in the army, this one says every single boy gets an education. And all boys were citizen at age 20. Unfortunately, Athens did not give citizenship to girls. Some girls did receive educations, some or many did not. Typically it'd be through a private tutor, and you'd have to be pretty rich to get an education. But as I was saying, Athens focused on arts, trade, people getting education. And eventually, this is going to lead to Athens becoming the most powerful of all of the city-states. And as you can predict, there's going to be a rivalry. Our song kind of mentioned it, between Athens and Sparta, and they will eventually go to war. But like we're going to talk way more in detail about Sparta next week, we're also going to talk way more in detail about Athens next week. Athens is where you probably typically have your ideas of Greek ruins like this and things like that, these statues. Those are all Athenian. So let's go do a quick little review game. Who can please remind for me, and I'm going to stop the recording here. Who can please